So back in the day, the Nintendo 3DS was the console that I grew up a lot with. My earliest days was the Nintendo DS, but it was the 3DS where I truly became a big Nintendo fan. Of course, I talked about a lot of Mario and Kirby games on this handheld device, but there were some other series that I played a lot of as well. And one of them is easily the Legend of Zelda series, because I've played a lot of Zelda games on the 3DS back in the day. I mean, hell, the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D was the very first time I ever beaten a Zelda game. And so when 2013 rolled around, Nintendo was hyping up this new Zelda game that reminded me a lot of the DS games. But this isn't just any ordinary 2D Zelda game, as it's supposed to be a sequel to one of the most iconic games in the series. And when I first heard about that, it did get me a bit more curious on the game, especially with the game explain analysis videos. Although even though I was curious, it wasn't really on my priority because Super Mario 3D World was also coming out. But not to say I completely ignored A Link Between Worlds, because I saw a lot of the trailers back then. Even this very cheesy one that's supposed to be a callback to the original Zelda rap commercial. Oh, the funniest thing too, I remember this one commercial that actually showed up when we were in class. Like, we were doing a lesson on science, I think, and it literally just popped out as a commercial ad on YouTube. I also remember this funny video with AJ Almuma trying to promote A Link Between Worlds while he's being chased by these two people. And then during the midnight release, I saw this really cool video of Nintendo New York making this cool chalk art piece for A Link Between Worlds. I just recently rewatched it again, and honestly I'm getting very nostalgic for this one video. As Nintendo tried to go all out with the midnight premiere because they had 3 games that was going to be released at the same time. Which were Zelda A Link Between Worlds, Super Mario 3D World, and Mario Party Island Tour. But anyway, so I got my copy during the Christmas of 2013. And I remember playing a lot of it back then, although I haven't really played this game in a very long time, so I'm very curious on how well this game holds up after all these years. Although I should give a heads up is that my experience with 2D Zelda is a bit more casual compared to the 3D ones. The only 2D games that I've actually played is this one, A Link to the Past, Link's Awakening Remake, and The Phantom Hourglass. But not to say that I played this game casually, because I really tried to explore the entirety of Hyrule, and honestly had a really good time doing so. But with everything out of the way, let's get started. So the story begins in the ever so iconic Hyrule, where Link suddenly wakes up as he's late for work. As this incarnation of Link is an apprentice for the local blacksmith. AKA, he's basically the delivery boy as he needs to deliver this sword to the captain. But as he tries to find him, he ends up at the sanctuary where suddenly trouble is afoot. As something has taken one of the locals hostage, and as soon as Link tries to go through the back door, he discovers this mysterious sorcerer who then traps this woman in a painting. Link tries to stop the dude by charging at him, but then ends up getting knocked into the wall unconscious. When he wakes up, he finds himself back in this house as this mysterious purple rabbit figure brought him here. And so, with no time to spare with a lunatic on the loose, Link then heads into Hyrule Castle to warn Zelda. Although, despite them never meeting, Zelda immediately recognized Link as he's been showing up in her dreams, as something very dangerous is going to be upon Hyrule very soon. As it turns out, the mysterious sorcerer was named Yuga, and the woman that he recently captured is actually one of the 7 sages. As it turns out, Yuga's plan is trying to bring all the 7 sages together so he can resurrect Ganon. And so, to prevent this from happening, Link needs to traverse through the entirety of Hyrule to collect the Pendant of Virtue, which are these 3 artifacts which allows him to obtain the legendary Master Sword. Which is something Link really needs because Yuga has taken over the entirety of Hyrule Castle and cast a barrier across it. And so it's now up to Link to travel across the entirety of Hyrule to figure out how to get the Master Sword. The plot of this game when you start is very straightforward, as it's basically Link trying to stop Yuga from taking over the world with Ganon. This is usually a story trend with a lot of Zelda games where when you start, the story is very straightforward, like Wind Waker, you're trying to find your sister. But halfway through the game is when the story truly picks up. But for now with this game's plot, it's just Link traveling through Hyrule to see what he can do. But jumping all the way to gameplay, so as I said before, the point of A Link Between Worlds is that it's a full-on sequel to A Link to the Past. And you can definitely feel it in the gameplay, because the best way to describe it is that it feels like a modern take on Link to the Past. But it has a couple of different twists on its own. For one, most of the basic Zelda stuff is here, like sword swinging, shield and such. But since we're now on the Nintendo 3DS, a lot of things here feels a lot more refined. For one, thanks to the dual screen setup, a lot of stuff like item management feels a lot more streamlined, as well as having full 360-degree movement. Very useful when you're trying to attack the enemy with your sword or items. But speaking of which, how you actually get the items this time is very unique compared to other Zelda games. As usually in Zelda games, you would find the items in stuff like treasure chests, but this time around, you actually have to rent the items. As while Link heads off on this big journey, Rovio decides to crash in at Link's house, where he eventually converts the entire thing into his own shop, where here Link can rent basically most of the items in the game. And so if you grind enough rubies, you can basically get most of the items early on in the game. Now keyword is rent, because if you die in this game, Rovio will retrieve all the rented items and you need to pay to rent them again. But eventually you can actually buy some of the items, although unlike renting, they are significantly more expensive, so like, renting like a bow and arrow, for example, would be 50 rubies, but actually buying it will be 400. Although actually owning it does have its own perk beyond just like keeping it, as you can actually upgrade your items thanks to this giant sea creature. Although, once you actually gather up all these items, this is when the game truly opens up. Like at the start of the game, you do have a destination you need to go to, but you can travel through a lot of different other places to try to get various items. Although it's highly recommended to actually try and do the dungeons first before exploring, because that way you can get most of the game's abilities. Like, the moment you explore the very first dungeon, you immediately get confronted with Yuga again, as he then traps another sage into a painting. You know, the more I say that, the more I think about the plot of Luigi's Mansion where King Boo was obsessed with turning people into paintings as well. But anyway, so after a small boss fight with Yuga, he has enough and decided to try and stop Link once for all by turning him into a painting and trapping him within the walls. But luckily Link had this special bracelet that Rovio gave to him, which allowed him to escape from the painting prison. And so because of this, Link has a brand new ability where he can transform himself into a painting and walk across the walls. Which leads to very interesting puzzles because you can't just stay in the painting forever because it does take up a lot of your magic meter. So for some of the dungeons that requires you to go through the painting like an obstacle course, you need to time it just right. And honestly, going through the various dungeons in this game are very fun to go through, especially since the pacing in this game is so good. And when you're not going through dungeon to dungeon, going through the various mini obstacles that you can find within the caves is very entertaining to go through as well. Hyrule, while being a bit small, is very compact with so many things you can do within this game, like various minigames or side quests. With the right minigame, you can basically farm so much rubies that allows you to get the items so quickly. And going back to quality of life improvements, they also added fast travel in this game, where throughout the game you can have these small little save spots, which is also your destination for fast travel. And all you have to do is just ring this bell and this witch will arrive to fly you to your next destination. Although it turns out that she was also one of the 7 sages, because later on in the game when you try to fast travel, the lady is suddenly missing. And this really caught me off guard because it really just happened. Like, no cutscene or anything, she's just gone and you realize what happened. Alrighty, so as soon as you collect the 3 artifacts, you're able to obtain the Master Sword. And so because of this, Link is finally being able to go back to Castle Hyrule, which is being bombarded by Yuga's troops, as the painting suddenly comes to life out of the walls and attacks Link. Again, just like in Luigi's Mansion. However, even though that Link tries his best, it is too late as Yuga was able to capture Zelda in the painting as well. Link tries to go after Chase, but he ends up in a dead end in this weirdly very calm looking area. But Link then discovers a mysterious portal where one's going after and going through this very trippy looking sequence. Link finds himself in a much more bleak looking Hyrule, and as soon as he explores the castle, it turns out that Link is too late as Yuga has all the 7 sages in Zelda now, and so he's about to resurrect Ganon once more. And so the Pig of Evil has returned. And just like that, Yuga reveals his true plans, which is to merge within Ganon to become one big entity known as Yuga Ganon, which almost tried to kill Link before this mysterious girl arrived to save him in the nick of time. This mysterious girl so happens to be Princess Hilda, who has failed Link in every way. Now that's definitely an introduction speech for yourself. But anyway, so Hilda was able to seal away Yuga Ganon temporarily, as Hilda fully explains on what's going on. So when Link enters the portal, he entered a parallel dimension, as he's now in a much more draft version of Hyrule called Lorule, which was the world Yuga was from before traversing through Hyrule. Although, since he merged into Ganon and become this giant trans-dimensional beast, he is now way too powerful for Link to defeat, and the only way to do so is for Link to rescue all the 7 sages. And this is when the game truly opens up, because not only you can explore the entirety of Hyrule, but also Lorule as well. And while you had to go through these 2 specific dungeons first, but once you enter Lorule, you could literally go through any dungeon in this game in any order you want. Like, I remember the first dungeon I decided to tackle is the one within the forest, as well as this thief's hideout, which is in the town. And frankly, most of the dungeons in this game has a very good length to them. And plus, even though that you do get most of your items, you still get very nifty items within the dungeon, like these nifty rocks which allows you to upgrade the Master Sword, as well as the scroll which basically doubles up your magic meter. And I love how all the dungeons have their own gimmick. Like in the forest dungeon, you're constantly being chased by this giant hand, or this one where a lot of the areas is made out of mirrors that you need to use to shine through the darkness. The Ice Temple has a very big focus on elevation, the Fire Temple has you try and freeze a path for you, and the Water Temple is a water temple. And the bosses in this game are very top notch, with each of them having a unique gimmick from one another. I think my favorite one has to be with this giant dude, as you need to merge within his shield to try and sneak attack him. Or this one in the desert dungeon, as you constantly need to form platforms so you don't get eaten. And while you're not going through the dungeons, there are just so many different goodies you can find within the world. And so by the time I was at the near end of this game, Link was very powerful. But if you want things to be more challenging, you can always just skip the items and just get straight to the point. But this game really encourages you to try to explore the entirety of Hyrule and Lorule, as you can get so many effective items in this game. And as for the presentation, for a fairly early 3DS game, A Link Between Worlds looks really good for the system. Even though, well, yeah, most of it is basically lifted from A Link to the Past, giving it a 3D glow up really feels like you're going through a new world. And since you're constantly shifting between 2D and 3D, it really gives this world a bit more depth to it. I'll be honest, I think A Link Between Worlds and the 3DS spin-off probably has my favorite kind of Zelda aesthetic in the entire series. I'd be down for a style like this in HD. And the music, is there anything else I should say about it? It's a Zelda soundtrack, so it's going to be amazing no matter what. And I love how they're able to modernize some classic tunes of the original game. Alrighty, so wrapping up this video, it's time to talk about the endpoint of Link Between Worlds. If you don't want any spoilers, then click on this tab right here, but in case, 3, 2, 1... Alrighty, so throughout your adventure, while you're trying to save the 7 sages, every time you rescue one, there's a small little cutscene with Hilda back in the castle. As similar to King Boo and Luigi's Mansion, Hilda lingers on Zelda's painting and talks about what's going on in the world of Lorule, and how much she laments at how well Hyrule's doing compared to her own kingdom. Immediately with the very first cutscene, something is definitely up. But as soon as Link was able to retrieve the final sage, they all bestowed Link the Triforce of Courage. And so with this power, Link then heads straight forth to Lorule's castle. And similar to most other Zelda games, this place is basically one big gauntlet, as most of the rooms are basically remixed versions of the dungeons you went through. All concluding once you head all the way back to the top of the castle. As once Link was able to head to the throne room, he finds Princess Hilda with the Zelda painting. And as it turns out is that Princess Hilda was with Yuga this entire time. As it turns out that her main goal was trying to steal the Triforce from Hyrule. As she explains, long ago the world of Lorule used to have their own Triforce. However, since the Triforce has the power to make any wishes come true and such, this caused the entirety of Lorule to go in war. And so to stop this war and hopefully have Lorule in peace again, Hilda's ancestors try to do one big hasty action, which is that they destroy the Triforce so no one can have that power. Unfortunately though, that Triforce was way more important because it doesn't only make their wishes come true, but it also gives their world life. As after they destroyed the Triforce, the entirety of Lorule crumbled before them. They tried to stop this war, but only made things severely worse. And so to try and save their world, Hilda needs to find a new Triforce. And so the reason why they captured Zelda is so they can retrieve the Triforce of Wisdom. She had Yuga to kidnap all the 7 sages so they can resurrect Ganon, because he had the Triforce of Power. And finally, Hilda sent Link to rescue all the 7 sages so they can bestow him the Triforce of Courage. And so with everything basically going according to plan, Hilda only has one more thing left to do, which is to steal the Triforce of Courage. So she then summons Yuga Ganon to try and kill Link. And so phase 1 begins as you need to constantly attack Yuga Ganon. However, halfway through the boss fight when Link has the upper hand, Hilda then appears again to tell Yuga to give her the Triforce of Power. And then, to no one's surprise, Yuga then backstabs Hilda and turns her into a painting, as Yuga has alternative plans for the Triforce himself. And so he then absorbs Hilda's painting and retrieves the Triforce of Wisdom. And so now Yuga has both the Triforce of Wisdom and Power. The only thing stopping him is Link with his Triforce of Courage. And so the true final battle begins, and even though it looks like Yuga might have the upper hand in this, Zelda has one final trick up her sleeve, as she bestows Link the legendary light arrows to finish Yuga once and for all. And the coolest thing is that this is the only weapon you can actually use within the painting, as you need to literally shoot Yuga out of the walls to try and attack him. But when it's all said and done and you do the final blow, Yuga has been vanquished alongside with Ganon. But Hilda is not done yet because she's still very desperate to get the Triforce. But then suddenly Rovio shows up, and it turns out that Rovio was actually a parallel version of Link, as long ago Rovio used to serve Hilda before he ran off to Hyrule. And I'll be completely honest, even though I did play this game years ago, I completely forgot about this fact about Rovio because I had just assumed that he was just like Nabbit from Mario. So this actually did caught me off guard, but anyway. So Rovio pleads to Hilda to stop this chaos. As he explains is that her desperation of getting the Triforce was the reason why Lorule ended up like this in the first place. And this helped Hilda snap out of her desperation, as she realizes that she can't just simply steal a Triforce as it belongs to Hyrule, not Lorule's. And so to amend all this, she then shows Link and Zelda the way back to their home world, as Hilda turned them into paintings so they could fit through the portal. But where they landed ended up being the Sacred Realm, which is the home of the Triforce itself. And so with all the Triforce pieces in hand, they were able to make one wish. And that wish being is to restore Lorule back to where it was by giving them back their Triforce. And so now Hyrule and Lorule are finally at peace, concluding The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. And final verdict? Still very good. I really adore this game, and after a decade later, it holds up very well. This game basically modernized what people liked about A Link to the Past, and brought it into the modern era with nice 3D graphics. Everything feels a lot more streamlined, and it still has that great exploration without it being too much of a copy and paste job. The story, while very straightforward for a Zelda game, I really do love the ideas what they were going for, like the idea about this being an alternative take what would happen if Hyrule ended up going into chaos. If you've never actually played a Zelda game before, I highly recommend trying this game out. It is really good. Although that being said, I really hope one day Nintendo would re-release this game for consoles. Like, despite some of the issues that Luigi's Mansion 2 HD came with, I still think Nintendo should do more of those. Like, I would love to imagine playing A Link Between Worlds in HD. But for now, I can just still enjoy the original game on my Nintendo 3DS. It was very good when I first played it 12 years ago, and it's still good to this very day. Definitely one of my favorite Zelda games in the series. But that'll do for today, so thank you for watching and I'll see you later. Bye bye!